Welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I am Tina. Today I'm doing a book review of Deus Irae by Philip K. Dick and Roger Zelazny. This is Adele sci-fi from 1976. It's a classic sci-fi, obviously. I almost turned into the God of Wrath when this happened. Ah, look, the back cover fell off. I guess after 48 years, that's bound to happen, but I was like, what is going on here? I got this book recently at a used bookstore, and it blew my mind that I found it there because I had just mentioned it. And then there it was, and I was like, Deus Irae! And the owner was like, what the hell? So, anyway, I expected this book to be far more zany and thought provoking than it was, but maybe it's because I wasn't particularly interested in the deeper kind of theme of the story. So, what is it about? Notes are here. La 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 la. Set in a bizarre world, you will encounter a bunch of backwoods farmers who happen to be lizards, a tribe of foul-mouthed giant bugs who worship a dead VW sedan, an automated factory that can't decide whether to serve its customers or kill them. Across this nightmare landscape, pursued by an avenging angel on a bicycle, one man makes a painful pilgrimage in search of the one who changed the world so drastically, the legendary but very real God of Wrath. So yeah, this is one of my classic sci-fi book reviews, so I'm going to do a review of the book spoiler-free, and then I'm going to jump into my classic sci-fi bingo at the end. So, how do I review this thing? Well, it's a quest novel about a man with physical disabilities traveling a post-apocalyptic wilderness in search of the leader of his religion with the intention of taking a photo of him so he can then paint him back in his town in their church or whatever. The man, Tybor, was born with phocomelia, I think that's how you say it. So he was born without fully formed arms and legs, like what thalidomide did back in the 1960s, which makes sense because given it's only 1976 when this came out, that would have been top of mind. Anyway, Tybor thus travels around on his wheelchair in this cart pulled by a cow. There are some other characters too, many of whom are introduced in the first quarter of the book and then never seen again. And there are some interesting results of the wasteland, such as a malfunctioning murderous AI and some mutated lizard people, which I mentioned from the back. Yet the novel is more focused on this kind of religious stuff, making the argument that religious belief is often based on misinterpretation of relics and other items than of anything else. I mean, obviously, but I'm not going to get into that because this is not a Tina Shares Reviews on Religion channel, so we'll just jump over that. Honestly, I was expecting way more weirdness given these two authors. I mean, we have Dick's trademarks Man on Drugs chapter, which I think is in like every one of his books, and a few zany things that likely came from Zelazny, but at times it felt like the two styles served to tone the other down rather than complement them. It wasn't a bad book, but I wasn't as impressed or immersed in it as I expected to be. Again, though, this could be because I'm not really interested in anything religious. I don't even like fantasy religions. So I was neither affronted nor impressed with their take on it. Wait, no, I take that back. I do like the ancient Greek religion. That one's fun. Overall, I think this book might be more interesting to those who would pick up on more of the religious stuff, but as a post-apocalyptic quest through the Wasteland novel, it's pretty tame. Now, there are some funny lines I will point out. Dominus sat, large and tepid, with strangely cruel teeth, as if he tore things, not necessarily living, in fact much harder, as if he did a job, a profession, teeth-wise. There was also a part in the book where some mutated bugs trash talk the mutated lizards, which made me think of The Bug Wars. The Bug Wars. Which is, one of my favorite classic sci-fi books. I also thought that a broken wheel bearing was a pretty funny problem in the book, given a few days before I bought this book, we had a major problem with the wheel bearing on our Sea-Doo trailer, so I was kind of like, well, that's a weird coincidence, because it's a big part of the book, this broken wheel bearing, and that broken wheel bearing was a big part of my vacation. So, yeah, that was interesting. Anyway, I can't really say much else about it. I mean, honestly, there really wasn't a lot in the book other than the kind of themes, and I don't really want to get into those themes. So, onwards to my classic sci-fi bingo. This is not going to be long. Outdated science. I'm not really sure if this is outdated science or what. I just thought I would mention it because it is science. So they, at one point, mentioned a color 3D photo. I don't know what that means. Like, does that just mean a regular picture? Or does that mean like a holographic photo? I don't know. It seemed like it was on paper. So I'm assuming they just mean a regular picture. And I love that they had to specify it was in color. But anyway, I was just like, I don't really know what this is supposed to be. So we don't have anything from spaceship blowing up all the way down to space soldiers. None of that. No aliens, no alien romances, any of that stuff. We do have AI and robots, of course. We have the Great C, which is I guess, the Great Computer, which was an AI who is trying to basically lure people into her lair so she can kind of take them apart and live off their bodies, I guess, their electrical impulses. I don't know, it's not really explained, but she's pretty cool. I liked her. And then there's also he saw afar off a robot farming, plowing with a metal hook welded to its waist, the section torn off some discarded machine. It did not look up. It paid no attention to him because it had never been alive, and only a living thing could care. The robot farmer continued to drag the rusty hook through the hard ground, its pitted body bent double with the strain, working slowly, silently, without complaint. Just hanging out. There are no new worlds in this book, and there is no cyberpunk. Sexism. Okay, no, there's no like sexism in this book, but I might as well talk about the women in the book for a second. I found this more of a religious critique than a sexist comment at the start of the book. Yes, she said, dry, dutiful, small, and withered, as if wetless personally. He disliked her body drabness as he watched her lay out a Melmac cup and saucer, not with love, but with the unwarmed devotion of a priest's wife, therefore a priest's servant. I was like, okay. Aside from that woman, Ellie, there is Lorene, who is actually pretty cool. Lorene is... Some supreme value lies in the slight, freckled, pale, red-haired, horse-riding girl of 20. I thought that was a funny description. And at one point, McComas, whom nobody likes, he says, like Shakespeare has Hamlet say to Ophelia, McComas growled at Lorene, get thee to a nunnery. Lorene, sipping coffee, said prettily, up yours. So yeah, she's in the story for a little bit. She is actually mainly just the foil or motivation for Pete, who does the guy that does the drugs that I mentioned earlier, whom she believes does too many drugs. So Pete basically goes after Tibor. He wants him not to paint a picture of the god of wrath because he's Christian and he doesn't want them venerating this so-called fake god. I don't know. I'm like, I don't really care about their problems. There's also the Great C, I suppose, as the AI identifies as female. Of course, she's a vengeful, life-stealing AI, but honestly, I'm down for that. There's also Alice, a young person with a cognitive disability who lives with the god of wrath and receives some sort of blessing at the novel and is healed of her cognitive disability. I thought that was kind of like, okay. The R word is used in this book, by the way, just casually, just warning you if you decide to read it and that word bugs you. There's also this line that probably wasn't intended to be sexist or transphobic, but it comes off as both. The 70s. In all his years as a servant of wrath, he had never possessed a mythical event, had never found God by any means, really. It's like finding out that Hayden was a woman. It just isn't possible to lay it aside after it's happened. Okay. All right, I don't really understand. Anyway, Forerunner technology, yes, in a way, the Great C would be an example of Forerunner technology. There's also this that they reference. Okay. So, Tibor found a bunch of junk and he just left it lying in the wasteland, and then this person, actually, I think it's one of the bugs, was like complaining about how he could have sold all those to the town. So Tibor says, and the transistor radio, when there's nothing on the air? The unit could be adapted to form an anti-fertility generator to be operated during sexual intercourse, says the bug. How? How does that work? I want to know. How that would possibly work. So we don't have anything from LGBTQ+ all the way down to racial equality. We don't have any of that. Future weapons, yes, they talk about wartime laser rifles, and they also talk about the bomb that blew up the world. I'm going to talk about that next with post-apocalyptic. So yes, this is a post-apocalyptic, post-World War III nuclear world set 90 years after this war. So basically this man, Carlton Luftwaffe, the god of wrath, Tibor is trying to find, he was the one who set off the bomb. He worked for the American government doing some kind of energy research anyway. Tibor and those of his religion worship him, believing he is still alive. And in the book, he is still alive. So, the bomb. So they call it the GOB. The Great Objectless Bomb, a bomb which detonated not at one particular spot on Earth's surface, but which acted so as to contaminate a layer of the atmosphere itself. It therefore could not be headed off as a missile could be by an anti-missile or a manned bomber, no matter how fast. And they had gone quite fast by 1982. So yeah, there's no galactic war, no tech like today, there's no Bechdel test, and no quick big bonus because the lizards are not aliens, they are mutated humans. So yeah, not really a lot to talk about with this book. I honestly expected a lot more. You let me down, Dick, you let me down. Yeah, so thanks for watching, and I hope you found that entertaining at least.